got a lovely day for it. Yeah, you bet. Well, goodbye.
Hello, and welcome to the Laurel and Hardy podcast, the only podcast that takes you on a chronological journey through the life and times of the world's best-loved comedy duo, Laurel and Hardy. I'm your host, Patrick Vasey, and this is episode 39. On today's show, we are journeying back to early June 1929 and the production of Stan and Babe's fourth all-talking comedy, Perfect Day. As usual, to help me discuss the history of this famous comedy, I'll be welcoming onto the programme a special guest, and this time we're welcoming back classic comedy aficionado Chris Seguin. So we'll be linking up across the Atlantic from his home in Toronto, Canada. If you're familiar with the show, you'll know that I don't like to cover Laurel and Hardy as if they were operating in a bubble, so Chris will be assisting me to look at what else was happening in Hollywood and particularly at the Hal Roach Studios during this period in question. All patrons of the podcast signed up to either tier on patreon.com have already received early access to a special edition of my audio essay on Perfect Day. That edition was the full and uncut version of the essay and also included a trial of using new AI technology to clone the voices of Stan Laurel, Hal Roach, Elmer Regis and Charlie Chaplin in order that a representation of their own voices would speak their own quotes made back in the day. Now, as I said, this was just a trial to see if or how it would enhance the audio essays. I asked for feedback and you responded. And on the whole, the trial was received very positively indeed. AI is always going to be a divisive subject, and I completely understand both sides of that argument. However, the vast majority of patrons who listened were very positive about the way the technology had been used. In fact, there were some who were initially against the idea, but had their minds changed once they'd listened. So thank you to all those patrons for taking the time to engage with the trial, and I really did appreciate and respect all of your views. So going forward, I think I may return to using it on the patron-only versions of the audio essays, but I will keep the standard versions on these open access podcasts to just my voice, as I've done throughout. That way there will always be the option of which version you prefer. If you're interested to hear these enhanced essays, then just pop over to patreon.com and become a patron of the show for as little as the cost of a cup of coffee per month. And you can get access to that and also the back catalogue of all the exclusive episodes and bonus segments on there. Oh, and one final word to patrons on the Plumtree tier. Now that this episode on Perfect Day has gone live, do look out for an invite to the first of our Fraternally Yours online discussion forums. The meeting will take place on Zoom, and it will be your opportunity to share your thoughts on Perfect Day, on anything we touch on in this podcast episode, on the AI voices, for instance. And you can also obviously ask any burning questions and lots more, all from the comfort of your own home. All being well, we'll be joined online by today's guest, Chris Seguin, and my colleague Russ Babbage will also be with us. And I know Russ is quite partial to a Laurel and Hardy quiz, so we may even have one of those up our sleeve as well. So again, if you're not a patron of the Plumtree tier, you can easily upgrade your membership from the lower elements. Or if you're not a patron yet at all, then just click on the link in the podcast show notes and head on over to patreon.com and join us today. So that's all the intro gumph out of the way. Go and grab your sandwiches, fire up the Model T, because we're heading off for a picnic. And today's film in focus is Perfect Day. It was filmed June 3rd to June 8th, 1929, and it was released on August 10th, 1929. It was produced by Hal Roach, directed by James Parrott, assistant director Lloyd French, and photographed by George Stevens. As the summer of 1929 got underway, Hal Roach had completed his schedule for 12 all-talking comedies. Each of his 4 series, Laurel and Hardy, Our Gang, Charlie Chase and the All-Stars, had all turned out 3 solid pictures. The producer was so happy and confident with the progress of his new venture that he publicly announced the end of silent picture production at his studio, saying, quote, "Silent comedies are gone forever, and unless there should be some unexpected return to the vogue of silent films or an unforeseen demand for non-talking pictures, we will continue to make all our comedies with dialogue and sound." In early June, Roach made a significant addition to the rostrum of talent at the studio by signing comedian Harry Langdon to a 5-year deal. Roach had been courting Langdon for some months, with press reports declaring a deal had been struck back in November 1928. Various stories were printed, with one trade paper announcing a 3-year deal in which the comedian was set to make feature-length talking pictures, which would itself have been a groundbreaking first for the Roach Studio. Then, a couple of weeks later, Roach was recorded as saying, quote, "Probably our first all-talking production will be in the form of a musical comedy starring Harry Langdon, surrounding him with a cast of victor artists and a singing beauty chorus, which we believe will shatter all precedent." End quote. The capture of Langdon's signature on a Roach contract was clearly a big deal for the studio, and they had some equally big plans for him. However, those plans would have to wait. For one reason or another, Langdon reportedly cancelled his contract by mid-December without a single foot of film shot at the Lot of Fun. Yet that was 1928, and this was 1929. Langdon's contract with First National had now expired, and his recent tour of vaudeville theatres had ended, so Harry was free to sign on the dotted line and take up his position as the headline comic of Roach's All-Star series, contractually obliged to make 8 two-reel comedies. Moreover, Roach assigned Laurel and Hardy's director, Louis R. Foster, to the Langdon unit. The studio had already successfully transferred Laurel and Hardy, Our Gang and Charlie Chase to talkies. Now they had to do the same, again with a man who was arguably Hollywood's finest pantomimist. Piece of cake, right? So, with Foster now busy directing Harry Langdon, the Laurel and Hardy unit was allocated a new director, James Parrott. Parrott was a good choice, having already successfully directed 4 of the boys' silent shorts in 1928. Although he'd recently returned to the Roach lot after a brief spell directing a handful of comedies for the Fox studio, he was very loyal to Hal Roach. Parrott's history with the producer dated back to 1917, beginning as an extra supporting the likes of Harold Lloyd and Stan Laurel, before being promoted in 1921 to star in his own series of comedies under the pseudonym Paul Parrott. Sadly, in 1924, difficulties caused by his epilepsy forced a change from an acting career to one behind the cameras, writing and directing. So despite losing Louis R. Foster, Stan and Babe's director, for their past 6 pictures, James Parrott would prove to be a fine replacement. Parrott's experience of comedy making, both in front of and behind the cameras, stood him in very good stead. But perhaps most crucially of all, Parrott and Laurel were good friends. Their camaraderie, mutual respect, and understanding enabled the new working partnership to flourish. Essentially, James Parrott knew and accepted that the way to get the best out of Laurel and Hardy was to let Stan have as much control on the set as he wished. Fresh back from their brief but important secondment at Roach's large and impressive neighbours, MGM, where they'd been loaned out to appear in the star-studded variety extravaganza, the Hollywood Review of 1929, Stan, Jimmy Parrott and the rest of the writing team began work drafting a script for Laurel and Hardy's 4th all-talking comedy. Although given the working title Step on It, it eventually, and somewhat ironically, was released under the title Perfect Day. According to the later remembrances of Roach's head of special effects, Roy Seawright, the film's simple story idea was provided by Stan Laurel, the comedian having witnessed his neighbours trying to set off for a picnic. That small seed of an idea, planted by Stan, nurtured and tended to by his team of fellow gagmen, organically grew into a classic two-reel comedy. Stan's musings were translated onto film as the preparations for a sunny Sunday day trip in which Stan and Babe attempt to take their wives, gout-ridden Uncle Edgar Kennedy and Buddy the dog for a ride in their Model T Ford with the ultimate aim of having a relaxed picnic. What could go wrong? Isabel Keith played the role of Mrs. Laurel in her first of only 2 films with the boys, and Kay DeLees returns for her 4th of 5 prominent supporting roles in Laurel and Hardy comedies. Interestingly, the role of the grouchy uncle was originally meant for James Finlayson, but for reasons unknown, the part was taken up and carried off excellently by Edgar Kennedy. Uncle Ed simply does not want to go on the picnic, as his heavily strapped gouty foot has kept him awake all night because...
But this gout of mine is killing me. I didn't sleep a wink last night. It was palpitating so.
Oh, but Uncle, I think you better come go with us. It'll be better in the sunshine.
No, I got a picnic of my own right here.
Now listen, Uncle Ed, you're going to go with us. Now there's your hat and coat. You get 'em on. And hurry. Are the boys ready? They're making the sandwiches. They'll be ready in a minute.
Stan and Ollie's introduction into the picture is cute. As we focus on the wives, we hear Ollie's melodic voice off camera coming from another room. And in through the swing door walk the 2 boys. Ollie carrying a huge platter of sandwiches to proudly present to their wives and grumpy uncle. Immediately, chaos descends as a sandwich falls from Hardy's platter and Stan bends over to pick it up. As he's bent over, the door swings and hits him in the behind, sending him headfirst into Ollie's midriff and causing the sandwiches to spill all over the floor. It's a decent enough gag, but arguably it comes across as a little contrived, certainly compared to their usual fluid and seemingly effortless standards. The sandwiches are repeatedly stepped on, sat on, and eventually used to throw at each other as their tempers escalate quickly. It's down to their wives to step in and plead with them not to spoil the day by fighting, as Mrs. Laurel implores.
Remember, this is the Sabbath. It's a day of peace.
The boys look sheepishly at one another and then, moments later, with big smiles, they make up.
No more arguments from now on.
No more arguments.
That's right.
Isn't it silly?
Yeah, sure.
That's the spirit, boys. Now let's pick up the sandwiches.
All right.
Get everything out in those things.
This sequence wonderfully conveys the boys' relationship, one very much akin to sibling rivalry. The best of friends one moment, sworn enemies the next, then back to being buddies again, all in a matter of moments. Following the sandwich fracas, Stan kicks off a series of gags that continue through the picture, which centre on Edgar Kennedy's heavily bandaged gouty foot. Throughout the course of the film, Uncle Ed's incredibly painful foot is unintentionally assaulted close to a dozen times, be it smacked, bashed, sat on, it even has a car dropped on it. In these opening few shots, set on a Roach soundstage, Kennedy first hits it himself with his walking stick, and then Stan comes along, drags away a supporting chair, causing Edgar's foot to drop onto Buddy the dog, who then retaliates by savaging it. Not the most auspicious start to a perfect day. Now that the premise of the comedy has been established, the rest of the film takes place outside the house and involves what should be the simple task of driving away to the picnic. The writing team's original intention for Perfect Day's plot was to primarily focus on the happenings at the picnic site. But, as was not uncommon when making Laurel and Hardy films, so many quality gags were hit upon in the early stages of filming that the decision was made to abandon the original plot and milk as much comedy out of the current situation as possible. When filming Perfect Day, the very act of setting off in the car provided so much material that they never actually managed to leave the street. Located at 3120 Vera Avenue, Culver City, the beautiful and rather quaint-looking arts and crafts styled cottage used for the exterior shots of the boys' house was built in 1925 and at the time of shooting was the home of Hal Roach Studio's electrician, Bailey H. Boone, and his young family. Roach often utilised the homes of his employees to make his pictures, and had he been present at the filming of Big Business, one could have forgiven Mr. Boone for feeling more than a little nervous agreeing to allow his home to be used. Fortunately, his lovely little house was mostly only used as a picturesque backdrop to the main action at the roadside, although at one point one of the windows does have a brick thrown through it by the boy's neighbour, played by Stan's longtime friend Baldwin Cook. According to the film's official promotional material, quote, 50 windows were smashed in one morning's shoot on Step On It. In a general neighbourhood free-for-all, the company hurled rocks, wrenches and missiles of all kinds. The quiet Culver City street where the scenes were filmed was turned into a chaos of flying glass and hurling stones. End quote. And that was published in the Hollywood Filmograph, June 15th, 1929. Apart from a couple of windows, the existing footage and the accompanying publicity stills do not reflect this description of carnage. There's a bit of neighbourly tit-for-tat, but generally the main focus is on the complications of getting their Model T Ford to behave. During these sequences, there is a terrific scene in which Kennedy's foot gets whacked 4 times in 9 seconds. This is a brilliantly crafted sequence of gags that is hardly mentioned in the film's original script, and certainly not in detail. A good example, perhaps, of the boys' inventiveness on set, creating and expanding gags ad-libbing as they went. Another gag worthy of specific mention is when Babe tells Stan to
Throw out the clutch. That's easy.
and Stan literally rips it off the automobile and throws it into the street. This gag, and most notably the resultant sound caused by Babe's angered reaction, have been widely commended as particularly inventive and groundbreaking in the use of sound effects, as this review from the Film Exhibitor's Herald illustrates. Quote, in one spot, Hardy hits Laurel over the head with an automobile jack, and the noise from the blow sounded like the ringing of an anvil when struck with a 12-pound hammer. It is the funniest sound effect yet recorded. End quote. This apparently small gag in effect rang a loud bell for the potential of sound effects in all talking comedies. In a later interview, film editor Richard Currier claimed that he devised the idea of mismatching sound effects with screen action in these early days of the talkies. This innovation answered the criticism that the introduction of sound was killing comedy. In reality, the creative skills of Stan Laurel and the gag writers at the Hal Roach Studios served to highlight the shortcomings of less imaginative directors, who failed to sustain the imaginative unreality that has characterized the finest silent comedies up to that point. Of this sound gag, Stan and Babe said, quote, it was a great improvement because it was both unexpected and incongruous. Those are the qualities which make people laugh at noises in pictures. End quote. While the Roach team were successfully pushing the boundaries of sound recording, it wasn't without difficulties. In an interview with trade paper Hollywood Filmograph, published just 2 weeks after shooting Wrapped on Perfect Day, Elmer Regis, Roach's chief sound engineer, identified the Laurel and Hardy comedies as being the most difficult to record due to the, quote, attendant crashes, explosions and other fun-making noises. Comedy recording requires a technique all its own, Regis stated. It is far easier to make a smooth reproduction of ordinary voices and conversation than of fun-making sounds. But we have been able to construct a controlling apparatus which enables us to prevent the thundering blasts usually recorded by smashes, falls, bangs, and loud voices. End quote. Elmer Regis's technical knowledge, skills, and problem-solving abilities were invaluable to the Hal Roach Studio, and one cannot overemphasize just how important he was to the organization and the production of their post-silent era comedies. Hal Roach, ever the forward thinker, was now heavily invested in sound technology, recording and reproduction, and with the expert assistance from the Victor Talking Machine Company, he continued to seek more ways to exploit the medium. At the start of June 1929, he announced to the trade press his idea to record and release musical numbers from his pictures for public sale, the first being Thelma Todd and Eddie Dunn harmonising in several duets. Indeed, music would soon become an important and identifying characteristic of Hal Roach comedies. But apart from the theme, "That's My Weakness Now," that plays over the opening titles, the original release of Perfect Day was entirely without a musical score. Even so, the comedy does have an excellent blend of both sound and dialogue. The dialogue is kept to a minimum, as it is in the best of the boys' work, allowing the physical action to push the film along. From their early experiments in talkies, Stan and Lewis Foster had quickly realised that pantomime was still their greatest weapon. Laurel and Hardy thrived on physical gags, and they found that the number of gags that could be employed dropped dramatically when dialogue was utilised too heavily. In May 1929, Charles Chaplin went on record to say how much he loathed the talkies. He said, quote, "They are spoiling the oldest art in the world, the art of pantomime. They are ruining the great beauty of silence. They are defeating the meaning of the screen, the appeal that has created the star system, the fan system, the vast popularity of the whole, the appeal of beauty. It's beauty that matters in pictures, nothing else. The screen is pictorial. I'm not using the talkies in my new picture. I'm never going to use them. For me, it would be fatal. I can't understand why anyone who can possibly avoid it does use it. Harold Lloyd, for instance." End quote. Chaplin was firm in his conviction and stood by it until he finally made his first talkie in 1940. But while his stance and reasoning appeared very strong, and his example of Harold Lloyd's questionable transference to talkies was arguably valid, Laurel and Hardy were actively disproving his theory. They had found that they could use dialogue to punctuate pantomime rather than spoil it. Buster Keaton also forwarded the same theory to his production supervisor, Larry Weingarten, at MGM, and had he been allowed to employ this formula in his pictures, could have saved his career had they listened. But ironically, his vocal laments fell on deaf ears. Stan and Babe used their voices sparingly, and where dialogue was required, it was charming and funny. In Perfect Day, one verbal exchange worthy of note is where we hear the first recorded instance of Mr. Laurel addressing Mr. Hardy as Ollie.
Step on it, Ollie.
I'll step on you in a minute. And don't call me Ollie.
This is a significant moment in the history of the Stan and Ollie characters. Up until this point, Stan had never audibly referred to Hardy as Ollie, or indeed any other name. In several of their silent pictures, it's possible to read Stan's lips as he calls out to him, "Hey, babe!" But this is the first instance of the use of the nickname Ollie. What's interesting is that in Perfect Day, Hardy strongly objects to being called Ollie, but we never find out why that is the case. One wonders then who made the decision to adopt the name permanently for the character going forward, and why he doesn't object on any other occasion. Whilst the use of Ollie in Perfect Day may carry historical importance, there is another word used in the film multiple times that has become synonymous with the picture. The word is simply goodbye. As the picnic party attempts to set off in the car, they drive just a few feet to the house next door, where their neighbour, Baldwin Cook, is happily gardening.
Going on a picnic!
Hardy shouts from the car.
You got a lovely day for it. Yeah, you bet. Well, goodbye.
All the passengers, apart from grumpy Uncle Edgar, return the pleasantry. They all shout and wave goodbye several times, and Cook smiles and waves and returns with more goodbyes, causing the would-be picnickers to follow up with even more goodbyes.
Goodbye! 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 Enjoy yourself! Bye! Goodbye! 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 Bye! Well, goodbye! Goodbye! Goodbye!
Just then, alerted by the friendly commotion, two more neighbours from across the street, Harry Bernard and Grace Woods, chime in from their garden swing seat. This goes back and forth from the car to the neighbours and then back to the car, everyone caught up in a ridiculous yet hilarious cycle that nobody can seemingly break. Grace Woods' high-pitched voice adds to the absurdity wonderfully. Perfect Day was released to theatres on August 10th, 1929 and received very positive reviews. Just 4 days into its run, reviewer W. Ward Marsh wrote the following, quote, Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy formed the most enduring film team, a team which one gladly endures. They are the most consistently funny pair on the screen these days, and although there aren't many pairs in existence anymore, Laurel and Hardy can stand comparison with other great teams of film history and not feel ashamed of their efforts. Their newest release, The Perfect Day, brings on a series of near convulsions in the theatre. Even though there is no novelty in it, and although most of the gags are worn thin, this slapstick kind of comedy becomes fresh and virile in the hands of these clowns. Time after time, they borrow incidents from their previous short reelers, and one moment I thought they were going back to that screaming Christmas tree picture, but they veered away from it, finally got the Ford started, and even got a block and a half from their house. And that was in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, August 14th, 1929. More approving reports came in from across the states. Quote, Every man, woman and child in the city should be made to visit the Strand this week, if only to see the Laurel and Hardy comedy Perfect Day, which completes the current bill. Perfect Day is a talkie, and it is the funniest comedy that we have seen or heard since that distant day when the screens of the country sat up and talked right back at the title readers who were the one-time pests of all movie houses. We hesitate to say too much about Perfect Day, for you never would believe us. So just take this as a friendly warning. You'd better see Perfect Day, or you'll never forgive yourself. There are too few laughs in this world to pass up such a glorious opportunity. And that was in the Hartford Courant, October 7th, 1929. Another one, quote, In the present day and age, with comedies that are talkies, it is hard to find comedians funny enough who can talk distinctly enough. Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy, the big and small of it in comedies now being shown, are equal to almost anything, however, and they'll keep you laughing. They are at the Fox Broadway this week in Perfect Day, with laughs from start to finish, a number of new gags and a lot of old ones, pulled in a different way. One of Henry's old model Fords, with something wrong on all four corners, and throughout the middle, being used to put it over. That was in the Oregon Daily Journal, October 29th, 1929. It wasn't all praise, however, with one unimpressed reporter from closer to home blaming the material rather than the comics, and still having to concede the audience enjoyed it nonetheless. Quote, The Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy talkie comedy dug far back in the old Mack Sennett files for this one, entitled Perfect Day. It is not worthy of these two fine comedians, though the audience seemed to enjoy it. End quote. And that was in the Los Angeles Evening Citizen News, November 1st, 1929. Laurel and Hardy's reputation amongst their adoring public remained as unshakable as ever, and regardless of critics' comments, exhibitors were again delighted with their patrons' responses to the boys' latest comedy, as these few reviews point out. Perfect Day. Good. Recording good on disc. Everybody well pleased. That was the Parkside Theatre, Clinton, Iowa. The Perfect Comedy. Any Laurel Hardy comedy will draw as well as the average feature. Disc recording very good. That was the Playhouse Theatre, Whitehall, Michigan. A Perfect Comedy. These boys are the best in the business. From the Fairfax Theatre, Kilmarnock, Virginia. And the last one, The Best Comedy I Have Ever Run. From the Strand Theatre, Springfield, South Dakota. On Saturday, June 15th, 1929, a week after shooting on Perfect Day wrapped, Stan and Babe appeared on stage at Grauman's Chinese Theatre for the farewell midnight matinee of MGM's hugely successful feature, The Broadway Melody. The festivities were to celebrate the end of the picture's record-shattering 5-month run. Although the boys did not appear in the picture, their invitation to take to the stage as guests of honour, alongside the film stars such as Charles King, Anita Page and Bessie Love, indicated the high regard in which MGM held Laurel and Hardy. At the very least, it illustrated their acknowledgement of just how popular Stan and Babe now were. Joining us for the second episode in a row is our correspondent from Canada. It's Chris. Wait a minute. It's Chris Seguin.
Although you've been practicing.
Yes, I have been practicing.
Nicely
Chris
done.
Seguin.
Yeah.
It's got a French twang to it, hasn't it? Seguin.
Yeah, my entire being has a French twang to it.
Is that right?
I'm of French heritage, but beyond liking escargot and Jacques Tati, I'm not as French as I might like to be. So I can't speak a word of the language. I couldn't even, like I said, I couldn't even pronounce my own name before, so I got to work on that. That's probably my bucket list thing.
Mange tout.
What?
Right, excellent. You look it up, it's fine.
Anglais, s'il vous plaît.
So, Chris, we're here today to talk about the Laurel and Hardy short Perfect Day. So, every day is a perfect day when we talk about Laurel and Hardy. What have you been up to in the meantime, Chris, since we last spoke?
I've been up to not much. I'll tell you something that is happening for me that's really exciting. And your listeners probably can't attend this. As I've been working with a local restored silent movie cinema here in the town I'm living in now, Hamilton. And it's been around for 111 years. It's been gorgeously restored. It's the only still standing cinema from that time. So I arranged with the owner of it to do a series of films, silent films that played there originally in the 20s. So we're going to start with the film Wings, which was the first Academy Award-winning film with Clara Bow. We're going to do that next week. And, we even have the ads of when it played back in 1929 there, right? So it's pretty exciting. We have a great pianist, a fellow named Jordan Clapman, who I've worked with before. And, hopefully we'll turn into a series. And what I do want to do, Wings is a very long film. Wings is almost 2.5 hours long. So what I'm going to do is show Wings, but I want to show Charlie Chaplin's Kid Auto Races, because it's only 5 minutes long, and because the theater was built in 1914 and Chaplin kind of made his debut in 1914. It's a nice little connection to that. But the ongoing thing will be to show, a standard length feature film and a short and a cartoon. So, just as it would have been back in the day. So I really want to make an effort to get some Stan and Babe on the screen for those things, right? Yeah,
you must. You have to.
I'm kind of obliged, but it is a thing where it's, to present these things as exactly as you've seen, your grandparents would have seen them, or your great-grandparents back in 1926 or whatever. So it's very cool. We're going to get some press coverage. The local TV station's coming over to talk to us on Monday. So it's exciting for me. It keeps my brain occupied,
Yeah. So what sort of animation are you going for? Something like Steamboat Willie or something?
Yeah, I'd probably go for maybe Steamboat Willie is technically a sound film. I've shown Plane Crazy before because that's technically a silent film. But probably some Oswald's, some Coco the Clown, that kind of thing. Felix the Cat, whatever I can drum up. Yeah. Bobby Bumps.
Oh, fantastic. So you're doing you got like an actual program, shorts, features, and a cartoon in the same program on the same day.
Yeah.
And are you doing multiple days or just one day?
Well, the idea is to do a monthly, like one every month.
Oh, great! Right? For how long?
As long as people keep coming, hopefully.
Yeah, excellent. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. So where's that going to be?
It's at the Playhouse Cinema in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and it's everyone go to. I think it's playhousecinema.ca, and just take a look at pictures of the place. It's a gorgeous theater. I go there all the time.
Yeah. Well, we have plenty of podcast listeners in Canada, so there we go. Get yourselves down to Hamilton.
Yeah.
Sounds wonderful. I might just hop on a plane.
I think you should.
I think I should too. So anyway, wonderful. That's great. Perfect Day. Let's get on to Perfect Day, Chris. We are taking ourselves back in time to June 3rd to June 8th, 1929. And just trying to think of the chronology here. So 1929, Hal Roach has just signed Harry Langdon to the Roach Studios,
Yes.
which was quite a significant signing back then.
Oh yeah, because well, Langdon was, even though he was having his difficulties in terms of his career trajectory kind of skyrocketing and plummeting pretty quickly, he was still a name to be reckoned with. And Roach had been trying to sign him from the very beginning based on a recommendation from Harold Lloyd, probably going back as far as 1923.
Oh, I
And
didn't know that. That's great.
well, there's just some information for you. But Roach also had some success with, the fading stars, although you wouldn't have really
Yeah.
considered Langdon that much of a fading star at the time. But it's like Mabel Normand a few years earlier. Let's bring in
Mm.
somebody who still has some name cachet. I think the original intent was to have him do four reelers, which was what Mabel was doing initially. I think she did a five reeler and then some three and two reelers. But to have him in what Roach would, eventually call the streamliners. And then you had mentioned that there was an article about signing him to do musicals.
Musical comedies, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was supposed to be Roach's first talk. He was going to be a musical feature-length comedy, I
Okay.
believe. Yeah,
It would have
yeah,
been an interesting thing because I wonder if it would have been one of those attempts at an all-star. So you'd have Langdon and Laurel and Hardy and the gang and Charlie Chase in there because Langdon's actually a good singer. You can hear him sing in some of his films. And
Oh, the Wee Wee song. You sent me the Wee Wee
the
song.
Wee Wee
Yeah.
song, yeah, you've got to play a little clip of that.
I like your smile, I like your style, I like your lingo too. But Frenchie, can't you see, your French is Greek to me. I get in Dutch, I talk too much to every girl I meet. So now I'll make my story short and sweet. If you will, wee wee me, I'll wee wee you. I know we'll have some fun when we get through. I'd do most anything for you, mama. How I love your ooh la la. If you'll encourage me a little bit, I'm certain you'll agree that I've got it. Now, little Frenchie, can't you see just what your wee wee means to me?
It's a great song. It's fun, but Charlie Chase is definitely the better singer. So that would have been interesting just to have that whole combination
Yeah,
in there, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
But
well, funnily enough, I know Roach at one point was thinking about releasing records of his stars singing songs from the comedies.
yeah,
I think the first one was going to be Thelma Todd and Eddie Dunn harmonizing or something.
yeah.
So I mean that could well have been the thing. It didn't work out by the looks of it, but yeah, he was obviously thinking down those lines.
Yeah, I don't know because I know that in the first All-Star talkie, which was Hurdy-Gurdy, which had Edgar Kennedy in it, and Max Davidson, and Thelma Todd and Eddie Dunn, that they sing a little song together, I think, towards at the end. I haven't seen it in a long time, but it's cute.
Yeah.
And I think that Roach was trying to make a little bit of a star of Eddie Dunn, which,
Right.
he just doesn't have that appeal. But it's cute, and you can see how, yeah, that would have been nice.
They called her frivolous Sal, a peculiar sort of a gal, with a heart that was mellow, an all-round good fellow was mine.
Charlie Chase did a fair number of musical shorts, and it would have been interesting to see, the other stars do that as well. Give Thelma a chance to sing a little bit more when she was teamed up with Zazu Pitts, that sort of thing. But I think Langdon sings in The Fighting Parson, so he sings in at least one of the Roach shorts. So he's well suited for it. But yeah, and I think there was the other thing that he had signed, but then he walked away from the contract because he didn't want to wait for the studio to rev up for sound. So he signed in 28, and it's like, okay, now we're going to take X number of months to revamp the studio. And he went, yeah, okay, forget the whole thing's off. But they managed to recover him. So Yeah, well, I think he did go on a vaudeville tour, and
Yes.
fairly high-end vaudeville tour. He wasn't playing the sticks; he was playing the big theaters. He still had that name, so he had a sketch called The Messenger, which I think naturally leads to what would be the very first short he did for Hal Roach was a promotional film for internal use for the MGM executives, which I think would probably just be called best Hal Roach Presents Harry Langdon. Now,
Yeah.
that's an odd film. People might have seen it on YouTube. And what I find what's really interesting about Harry Langdon and this transition is that he, in the silence, he's an odd but plausible human being.
Yeah.
In the talkies, he's suddenly this radical shift to this otherworldly kind of very
Yeah.
odd person. And that's when it becomes, Harry Langdon's always a kind of love him or hate him guy. But when it gets into this, it's kind of mind-boggling. It's such like Laurel and Hardy. It's not a case of like with Laurel and Hardy or Charlie Chase, or it's like, oh, their voice suited them. It's like
Yeah.
this voice is totally out of left field. But the thing is, Langdon was in vaudeville for years and years and years
Yeah. Of
before
course.
before he went to films, and he wasn't a mute comedian on stage. He did that conversation,
That's a
and
good
it
point. Yeah.
it obviously made
Yeah.
him successful. So my understanding is that the Hal Roach Presents film is kind of based on this thing, The Messenger, where
Okay.
there's some interaction with a woman at the front door, and it probably had a lot of the same kind of innuendo in it. Because for those who haven't seen it again, lots of innuendo where they make reference to. So Harry is talking to Thelma Todd, who answers the door, and he's looking for Mr. Quimby, who is Fred Quimby, who I think was head of distribution for MGM of the shorts at the time. I'm not absolutely sure, but it's like, do you have any little Quimbys? And then it's like, do you and Mr. Quimby make Boom Boom?
What do you want?
Huh?
What do you want?
Oh. Oh. Well, my goodness, how are you?
Why, I'm very well, thank you.
You're very well, huh?
Yes.
And well. Are you Miss Quimby?
Yes.
Well, you're Mrs. Quimby, huh?
Yes.
Have you got any little Quimbys?
No.
Oh, you haven't got any Quimbys?
No.
Not one little Quimby?
Not one.
Well. I like your home. Oh, boy. Uh-oh. Oh, boy, what a home. Uh-oh. Everything. Apples and lamps and you and me and everything. I like it. It's a nice home. Well, is Mr. Quimby at home?
No, Mr. Quimby is not at home.
Oh, Mr. Quimby is not at home.
No.
He's not in the house. He's not in the house, and he's not out there.
No.
Well, for goodness sakes, for goodness sakes, you and I better look into this matter, hadn't we?
I'm not worried about Mr. Quimby.
Maybe Mr. Quimby's making boom boom.
Mr. Quimby never makes boom boom.
Oh, no? Don't he make one little boom?
No.
No, not one little boom. Well, maybe Mr. Quimby, because Mr. Quimby isn't here, maybe Mr. Quimby is out with Howard Dietz.
Kind of things like that, and it's very, again, it's very strange, and you can only watch it with this kind of staggering sense of wonder when you first, like the first time I saw it, it was on a big screen in an audience, right?
Oh,
With a
wow.
big audience, and it's just like, you can't not laugh at it just because it's so
Yeah.
weird. And I
Odd.
think, any
Yeah.
any film only succeeds on the basis of the laughter in a theater.
Yeah.
I think you can sit and
Yeah.
watch this on YouTube. It's on there if anyone wants to look at it and kind of be baffled by it. But if people
Yeah.
are laughing at it, which they did, because it's funny dialogue, it's weird, but it's still funny, right?
Yeah, it
And
is.
so that kind of goes on because it's only talking and facial expressions. There's no physical comedy in this. It runs for maybe 5, 6 minutes. I'm not sure. But then the interesting thing is I want to find out. Give me 1 second. I got to look for this thing at the end. So Harry, essentially in this film, his goal is to bring Mr. Quimby home, right?
Right.
And then Mr. Quimby turns out to be this drunk, staggering drunk portrayed by Eddie Dunn. And, that's the fade out. It's like, here's Mr. Quimby. Oh my goodness. Oh, and I think Dunn goes, no, that's Mr. Feist or something like that. They're name dropping all these
Right, yeah.
executives, right? So it's really funny. And all I can picture is these guys sitting smoking cigarettes in a little screening room with big cigars,
Screening
not
room.
cigarettes, but big cigars and a scotch and just laughing their heads off. There's,
Yeah.
there's a line, I got some of these lines right down. It's like, when Harry's saying, have you got any little Quimbies? Not even one little Quimby. And it says, if you were Mrs. Rogers, would you have any Quimbies? So again, it's super funny. And it's like, if Mr. Quimby came home, no, he says, if Mr. Quimby came home intoxicated, would you raise a rumpus? And she goes, no. She goes, and Harry goes, not even one little rump.
A little rump, that's right, yeah.
It's funny, but the interesting thing at the end is so fade out and then fade back up, and there's Eddie Dunn on screen, and he talks to the audience, and he says something along the lines of,
Gentlemen, if you'll just permit me to sort of step out of my character for a moment, I have an announcement to make. Mr. Roach has requested me to tell you folks out there that he has added another star to his already well-known firmament. A very great star, in fact, Mr. Harry Langdon. Mr. Roach has the greatest confidence in the world in Mr. Langdon, and I know that Harry is with Mr. Roach, heart and soul.
Mr. Roach has the greatest confidence in the world in Mr. Langdon. And I know that Harry is with Mr. Roach, heart and soul. And I think that addresses kind of the feeling out there that Langdon was difficult to work with. And it's a little bit of a reassurance for the MGM executives that, Capra always, Frank Capra, who directed Harry Langdon's first features and worked with him at Senate, had a very low opinion of Langdon at the end, calling him a conceited jerk, and basically was making a lot of noise around the time that Langdon was difficult to work with, very arrogant, egocentric, etc. So this was a little thing to go to him. No, don't worry, Harry's not going to do any of that kind of crazy stuff now that we signed him, right? I think I read somewhere, these are always, they're true or not, but Roach apparently saying to Langdon upon signing, none of that high-handed stuff like you pulled at First National. So, which sounds like, I don't believe that's necessarily true. But, Roach always had a good story for every occasion. But, so it's interesting, but to go into that situation with that little bit of, let's make sure everything's good here, make sure everyone's reassured by this because, his, if not his star power, definitely his box office power had dropped considerably, right?
Yeah. It's. I mean, I remember the first time I watched it, I couldn't believe what I was watching. I thought, what is this? This is just, as you say, really odd.
Yeah.
The second time I watched it, which was not long ago, I loved it actually. I thought it was really really good. But what I suppose now, looking at it, when you understand that this is a kind of a promotional trailer for those MGM executives, it kind of all makes sense all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And you can almost see, or you could envisage before the camera started rolling, they just had a little bit of a chat. Harry and Thelma, we'll just say this kind of stuff. This is what we'll do.
Yeah.
And Thelma's going along with it. And Harry is just doing this complete oddball routine. And Thelma's at one point thinking, should I say something at this point?
Yeah.
And she, what do you want? She's really trying to roll with it, but it's like really demanding of her.
Well, he's
really good.
She rolls along. I mean, Thelma's always great. She's very reactive, great reactive foil all the time for any comedian. But she rolls with it, and she laughs sometimes because it's just so silly. right? I can't tell you exactly when, but she's terrific in it, and that kind of leads to the first actual real life theatrical short, Hotter Than Hot. And part of the reason we're talking about Harry Langdon at this point is because I think Hotter Than Hot came out a week or two after Perfect Day. So that gives you a little bit of a timeline of where Harry was in terms of the other series there. Because I think that does work against Langdon's first films. So that means almost all of the ones at Roach, because all the series at Roach took a while to find their groove, right? So you're looking at something like how great was They Go Boom among the Laurel and Hardy canon at that time, right? So, but again, with Langdon, he had more things going against him. Laurel and Hardy had developed, and Chase and the Our Gang series had developed a thing where they were already speaking naturally without microphones on, right? So you can. That's why they were able to like dub voices onto double whoopee and make it plausible, right? But if you were to listen to Harry in one of the silent films, it would be like, what? Right? So Harry had to get used to a new studio and a new medium as well, which is the talking medium. And again, he was a talking comedian on stage, so maybe it wasn't that big a thing for him, but it might have been a little shock for the audiences at the time. But it sounds like people accepted him when you look at the reviews and what the distributors had to say. All of the series will get like a bum review. You'll see,
Of course.
nobody laughed at the Hooskow in my theater,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
The worst,
There's always one.
Love Business is the worst Our Gang ever. That stuff happens, so you'll get the occasional one, but for the most part, they seem well received. There's also the idea that turns out to be a myth that Roach let him go because Roach was going to continue with the series, but Harry wanted out because he was going to be not top billed, but I think second billed in a this kind of extravaganza World War I musical film that Warner Brothers was doing in 65 millimeter. So it was like big
Wow.
screen. So
Okay.
it's like a big opportunity. So
Yeah.
Harry went, I would rather do this in features and get back into features. So Roach let him go. Ultimately, the film was cut down to about an hour long and in 35 millimeter because musicals were by that time like we're so tired of musicals in the
Yeah.
talkies,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
he gets to sing the Wee Wee song in it, which is lots of fun. And he plays a more realistic character,
Yeah.
and you can go, he's just turning into a really interesting comic actor at this point, right? And
Right.
he
Right.
did a little bit of that. There's a really delightful film he did called Hallelujah, I'm a Bum with Al Jolson, where
Yes. Yeah. I've seen a bit of
where
that. Yeah.
he plays a trash collector, and he gets to sing in that, and he gets to do his little Harry Langdon things, but it's a world he belongs in.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's kind of a shame that none of that went anywhere for him, because pretty
Yeah.
soon he was doing the two reelers at Educational,
Yeah.
which is, same with Buster Keaton later on. Well, once you're at Educational, you're gone, right? It's like that's the end of the road for you, right? But the
Yeah.
shorts are good
Yeah.
because he gets much more into pantomime.
Yeah.
So he's this quiet guy. So he's not like this babbling strange thing. He's just this quiet, curious, little bit otherworldly guy
Yeah.
that feels like his silent character.
Yeah.
Where like he'll redo scenes from uh, The Strong Man where he's in the coach and he puts Limburg cheese on his chest instead of antihistamine or ointment because he has a cold. And he'll do a lot of those things. He did this wonderful thing where it was just he dropped his hat on the grass in a park and then a sprinkler keeps going off and he can't get his hat because the sprinkler is going off. It's 5 minutes of that and I'll watch that. I'll watch 5 minutes of Harry Langdon trying to get his hat anytime, but that's just me.
That's good. That's good. No, well, from what I've seen of Langdon, I do like. I mean, you introduced me to Harry Langdon in the first place, so whenever I want to talk about Harry Langdon, I always come to you, Chris. So, what I found interesting was that so Langdon gets signed by Roach, and he is now the head of the All Stars, as Laurel and Hardy were. But prior to that, Edgar Kennedy was head of the All Stars.
Yeah, like after Laurel and Hardy became Laurel and Hardy, they had the All-Star series, and the Max Davidson series was canceled. I think, yeah, and because MGM wasn't keen on Max Davidson. So Edgar Kennedy became more or less the lead guy in these films. You know, you'll see him in A Pair of Tights. But as they go on, and they're very difficult to see. The late silent, early sound all stars are just not around. They're not available. But you'll see something like Hurdy Gurdy or Dad's Day or something like that, and it's all, you know, Edward Kennedy getting top billing on the posters and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
so he's starting to get a little bit of a trajectory there. At the same time, he's doing a ton of work with Laurel and Hardy. He's in Bacon Grabbers, he's in Angora Love, he's in Perfect Day, he's in Unaccustomed as We Are. So he's doing all that. He's doing stuff with Charlie Chase as well. So he's
and
Langdon, yeah, he's in The Head Guy and in Hotter Than Hot. He might be in another one or two, I'm not sure off the top of my head. But he's the guy with juice at Roach. Like, he seems like a successor to whatever's next. And I always feel like Kennedy was going, it should have been me, not Langdon, getting my own series, right?
It does make you wonder how he felt about it. You know, he was getting some traction, then suddenly Harry Langdon comes in, takes over the series, and Kennedy is suddenly a supporting actor in Langdon's first film.
Yeah, I don't know if he was like accustomed to that because he'd always been second banana for the most part, or if he really did see the opportunity in it. You know, what becomes interesting is that when he left Roach, he went to RKO and he had probably, I think, the second or third longest running series of shorts. You know, after, let's say, the Three Stooges and the Little Rascals. You know, he did shorts for from 31, I think, until 47, until the day he died.
Wow.
He was doing all sorts of features. Occasionally got kind of pretty high billing in a feature, but mostly supporting roles. He's great in The Sin of Harold Diddlebach with Harold Lloyd. Also, like, he's just wonderful whenever he shows up. He's in Air Raid Wardens with Laurel and Hardy again. He's in the radio wedding sketch with them as well. But here's a little bit of interesting trivia, and I saw this in Scott McGillivray's book on the 40s Forward, which is after Kennedy died, there was this internal memo at RKO, I think written by Hal Yates, who had directed Hats Off, and I think a few other Laurel and Hardys, asking if we should get Babe Hardy to take over Edgar Kennedy's shorts. Yeah, because he's going, I think they're retired. I think Laurel and Hardy are retired. So why don't we go after Babe Hardy, right? And we went, well, that would have been interesting. You know, just Babe doing domestic comedy like Edgar Kennedy did, because they're very similar. Like, Kennedy was known as the king of the slow burn, right? That was his trademark. He'd, you know, kind of rub his face in, you know, anger or frustration. And yeah, that's what he made his nut on. But yeah, he had like an incredibly successful career being, you know, at the second rung of Hollywood. Strong supporting actor and lucrative, successful, long-running series of shorts. So he ended up doing very well for himself because those shorts are terrific. They're like sitcoms because he always has the same wife. The same,
The Average Man, was it?
The Average Man series. The same brother-in-law or the same mother-in-law, and it's just, what are their adventures this time? You know, it's like the Blondie and Dagwood series. So those are fun to watch. The other thing about Kennedy, which is interesting, like if you look at the Roach shorts from the Perfect Day era, all the talkies are pretty creaky. at that time, right? The creakiest ones were the Hourgang shorts. So the first one that was released around the same time as Perfect Day was Boxing Gloves. And it's they still have the silent kids in there. They're not going to be there much longer, though. You can see Jackie Cooper in there for the first time. A few of those kids will survive, like Farina and Marianne Jackson and Weezer. But McGowan's direction would be, okay, kids, you do this, you do this, and he could talk to the kids, right? Now he can't, right? So the kids are a bit adrift. They're overacting, but the production is odd because there'll be long scenes where it's these two kids are boxing, Joe Cobb and Chubby are boxing, but it'll be a little bit undercranked, but you don't hear the kids cheering. So it'll just be silent.
Yeah.
Right? And then it would cut to dialogue and then you'd hear the kids kind of in the background, but it's all over the map in terms of it's like one of the sloppiest things I ever saw Roach produce.
There's probably a cacophony of noise in the background, isn't it? They just have to cut.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to be horrific to watch.
Well, but it could have been. I mean, they had the technology and the knowledge then to like dub in some kids cheering or something, but because it's just like here's a silent stretch of silent film for 95 seconds, and then all of a sudden there's noise. But
it's the same in Men of War when you look at the scenes with by the side of the lake. The Finlayson's there, and it's like silent for a minute while he mugs, and then there's noise at the lake, and then it's silence again. It's odd, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's pretty. They're pretty creaky that way, but they all ended up getting better. The chase films are pretty good from that era, but Laurel and Hardy's. I think Huskow is the last one where you go, this feels like a transitional or they haven't quite got it yet film, because I think after Huskow is Bratz, and Bratz knocks it out of the park, right? Blotto, that sort of thing. But this probably leads into Perfect Day a little bit.
Well, you got here at last, huh? What do you mean, got here at last?
Let's hope so.
We should probably talk about.
We should probably. But no, there is a link. I was going to bring it around to a link because obviously we were talking about Edgar Kennedy, and Edgar Kennedy, yes, he's in Perfect Day, of course, as the grumpy Uncle Edgar.
Yes.
And apparently James Finlayson should have been in the role of the uncle rather than Edgar Kennedy.
Yeah.
So why he was taken out and replaced, who knows?
Well, what's interesting is so two things. One is I was going to mention the reason I brought up Our Gang was because those first shorts are so difficult. They introduced Kennedy as the first recurring adult character in the series.
Yes, yeah.
Right? So he played, there was only, I think, 3 recurring characters, which would be Kenny the Cop, Miss Crabtree, played by Jean Marlowe, the teacher, and then later on, Rosina Lawrence doing Miss Lawrence as the teacher, kind of a second Miss Crabtree. But I think they needed that to take away all the awkwardness of just children. And Kennedy has such a warmth, because he's kind of like the bumbling neighborhood cop, but he spends most of his time just like hanging out with the kids and talking to them, and he brings like a real level to charm. There's scenes where you'll see him sitting with Jackie Cooper and just talking about things, and you go, well, this is kind of like Cooper and Wallace Beery in The Champ, except maybe 3 years earlier. So again, Kennedy, and it's interesting because he was only in 4 films, but you think he's in more.
Right. Okay.
Just because he was such a presence, and he brought so much to the game.
That's nice. Yeah.
So
I remember talking to Bill Cassara about Edgar Kennedy on. We did a special episode just on Kennedy a good while back now, but he was saying that he was a really gentle man. He was a lovely man.
Yeah.
And a very sort of softly spoken, and you can sort of pick up on that in some of the scenes, unaccustomed as we are, when he comes off all big and brash that he's going to tell the boys off and this and the other, and then he goes to Mrs. Hardy, there, and you can see that real gentle side to him, and that sort of softly spoken voice that he could use.
Yeah. But I would say that if anyone, like, if you want to see Kennedy at his best doing exactly what you're talking about, seek out the Our Gang film, The First 7 Years.
Okay.
And so it has, Prime Gang has Jackie Cooper and Mary Ann and Weezer and things in it. And just this interplay with the kids and his role within their world is really
Yeah.
interesting. But you see exactly what you're talking about there, just that kind of gentleness and kind of being a big kid.
Yeah.
He would be a member of the gang, except he's 40 years older than them. So
Brilliant. That's grand. So Perfect Day, Chris. What are your thoughts on Perfect Day, just generally speaking? Is it a short that you like, or because I know some people don't like Perfect Day because it's a little bit kind of samey in places with the goodbyes and all this kind of stuff. What do you think about it?
well, I think that's the joke, right? Like the
Yeah.
goodbyes.
Yeah.
It's like you see a Tex Avery cartoon when a limousine comes in and it, from the front to the end, it takes, 8 seconds
Just
and
keeps
then there's a
coming.
little sign that says, long, isn't it? Right? It's the ridiculousness of that. And it's a very good use of sound too, right?
Mm.
Because
Mm.
it reminds me a bit of That Was Mrs. Kennedy from
Yeah.
Uncut Gems.
Yeah.
It's the repetition. And then I was watching
Yeah.
Charlie Chase in The Snappy Sneezer, which is around the same time as Perfect Day, and he's
Yeah.
trying to get some traction of just saying over and over again, "Am I sorry?" Right? And it's just like, yeah, it doesn't work, but
Yes.
they're just trying stuff out, right? I
Yeah.
think that works really well. What's interesting about A Perfect Day and the goodbye, goodbye thing is back in the 70s, before there was even VHS, you could buy LP records of Laurel and Hardy sketches,
Yeah.
right? And that's where
Yeah.
the number two hit of Travelers and Pine came from. So there
Yeah.
was this vinyl album, I think it was just called The Golden Age of Comedy, Laurel and Hardy,
Yeah.
and it ends with about 7 minutes of A Perfect Day on record.
Yeah.
And it's fun to listen to because the music is great because it's got that reissued music, but
Yeah.
it uses choice bits of dialogue. All these things are dependent on, hopefully you've seen the film so you can kind of visualize it. But
Yeah. That's right.
that plays off. So I think for me, Perfect Day is their first perfect talkie,
Okay.
right?
That's interesting.
It,
Yeah.
unaccustomed as we are, is um, pretty stilted. They're trying to figure
Yes.
stuff
Yeah.
out. Birthmarks is Birthmarks. Very contained. I've said before, I'd like to see Birthmarks on a big screen and see how people react to it versus watching it on TV or see it as a silent version with music. Um, Men of War is really good. It has that great dialogue sequence at the beginning with the underpants. Then it has the soda, 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 which is a marked improvement over Should Marry Men Go Home. But it falters when it gets to the boat scene. So it's like you were saying, it's just awkwardly done because there's patches of silence, etc. But it also kind of goes nowhere. Like if you're going to do these tit for tat scenes, they need structure. It just can't be one person bumping another person and falling out of the water and getting mad, right? So I think that fails on that part. I love the first two parts. I love that, oh, and I just washed them in gasoline.
Yeah.
It's great
Yeah.
stuff,
The
right?
cross purposes.
But
Brilliant. Yeah.
yeah, it falters that. But Perfect Day is just this lovely construct of, like a lot of Laurel and Hardy films, it has the first couple minutes to set things up, right? So, it's kind of like in Toad in the Hole when they're driving their car, or, um, you know, uh, Should Merry Men Go Home, where they're in Ollie's home and Stan shows up before they go. So they set things up really nicely. There's a lot of really nicely choreographed um, physical comedy, slapstick with the sandwiches, where
I see. I don't like that gag. This one gag that really bugs me is that very first one where they come in and the swing door hits him in the arse,
yeah,
and he headbutts him in the stomach, and it's just very choreographed. I find that one it irks me because usually they are so natural
yeah,
and fluent, and it looks so as if it's really happened, Whereas this one is a bit like, I'm just waiting for this door to hit me. Where is it? Oh, it's there. Now I go in, and you could just kind of read it as a
I can see that
choreographed script.
Yeah,
it's very nitpicky.
Yeah,
very very nitpicky. But it's just one gag that I think, oh, that was clunky. You can do better than that.
It would have been better if it was, undercranked a bit.
Yeah, possibly.
But wasn't
possibly.
because of talkies, right? It's like when you see Modern Times with Chaplin, when he does the dance at the end, which is a wonderful scene, the song and dance, but it's not undercranked. So he's kind of not Charlie Chaplin anymore. He doesn't have that same bounce, right? So that may have been it. And I think, later on they would do things like that where, they would undercrank stuff and splice it into the sound films, but like the Our Gang thing where they don't bother adding sound, they figure out how to make it seem more natural. But I get where you're coming from that, but what I like about it is there's no clunky dialogue. Like Men of War has that great dialogue sequence at the beginning, but there's no jokey dialogue in this film at all, except for goodbye, goodbye, right? There's really kind of nothing there. The funniest line is Kennedy going, "Oh shit." When they see the pastor.
The funniest line.
But there's nice little touches, like I do like the thing with when Kay DeLee says Ollie's wife goes,
"Come on, Oliver, step on it."
Step on it, Oliver. Right? And it's just like, yeah, step on it, Ollie. Don't call me Ollie, or I'll step on you.
Yeah. I'll step on you in a minute.
Yeah, and that's interesting because they're finding their characters, right?
Step on it, Ollie.
I'll step on you in a minute. And don't call me Ollie.
But that's the kind of dialogue they should be doing, right? They're not doing the hello, Mrs. Kennedy. That was Mrs. Kennedy. They're not doing those kind of trying to be jokey
that's right.
things.
That
And I think that might be.
Yes.
I don't think there's any of that in Birthmarks really, but the problem with Birthmarks is there's at a certain point there's no dialogue. It's just like, will you move over?
Just giving up on that.
But this is the perfect blend of finding, if not their complete rhythm, their 90% rhythm in terms of doing talkies. It doesn't feel awkward. And what's interesting is, like, we've all come to know it from the reissue version, which has like that magnificent late era Leroy Shield music that they used in Way Out West and Our Relations. So that picks up the film considerably, right? And that's why it plays well on a vinyl record, because you got that great music, right? But the original version was released, I think, on the Essential DVD set. And so you don't have that. So it does seem a lot slower, but it doesn't.
Yes, there's no music at all, is there? Yeah, apart from the intro music.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel any slower than the Huskow does. It still plays like a very good 1929 short comedy. And I don't know what high praise that is, because there's so many awful 1929 like talkie shorts from other studios. Check out Christie and Max said it at the time. But it feels like it belongs in the Laurel and Hardy canon, right? Like I remember when you were a kid and you'd watch, let's say, the Our Gang's Little Rascals, and they would show one of the really early ones, and be like, oh geez, I can't sit through this, it's so slow, right? You're 12 years old going, this is so slow. But it works well. It's interesting that it's, I'd written down at a certain point that it felt like the first film that couldn't play as a strictly silent comedy. And then I changed my mind about it. So I think it would play well as a silent. They would have, versus something like Unaccustomed as We Are, which doesn't. Because there's so much wonderful but unnecessary dialogue, really. They're just talking like human beings. But I'd also written down there's not a lot of physical comedy, but there is a lot of physical comedy, but it's small, right? Because they're they're contained, right? They're it's not like birthmarks where they're super contained or on the boats in Men of War, but this is their little world, this 20 feet of road with neighbors across the street. And everything happens within that 20 feet of road, 8 feet of it being the car, right? And what's inside the car. So whether it's throw out the clutch or it's, the really wonderful thing when I was watching it again, whether they get the wrong jackets on and they're just getting tangled up. And again, you could watch them do that forever.
Give me my coat. You always...
Boys. Now, will you get started now? Stop this foolishness. Ladies, come on now. Well, stop all your foolishness and let's get going. Come on, all you two. Come on, boys. Let's hurry now. He's not going to hurt your foot now. Stop it.
They keep cutting to Isabel Keith, who plays the wife. She was also in Be Big as the wife. And she's great because she's a bit like Dorothy Christie in Sons of the Desert. She's got that cool to her.
Yeah,
right?
She's very good. Yeah.
But they keep cutting away to her going, come on, boys, let's get going. And I feel like it's because they just let that ad lib of getting tangled up with goats go on for about 10 minutes. And then you need something to cut it up, right? So there's all sorts of really lovely stuff in it like that. It has the tit for tat thing, which again just felt obligatory to me.
Yeah, with
the
Baldwin
windows.
Cook. Yeah.
But they were smart enough to cut it short by having the pastor come by. Like, the next window's going to break, but it's like everyone scatters because it's, it's Sunday, the day of peace.
It does, because it does threaten to fall into big business, doesn't it? It threatens to be, right, I'm going to destroy your house, you're going to destroy our car. Okay, we've seen this one,
but
then it
exactly.
Coming,
it's just like, and you're glad it doesn't happen, right? Because, you are actually. That is a thing with, the early Laurel and Hardys is there's a lot of those tit for tats, right? Yeah. And, so. Men of War had the tit for tat. Birthmarks had the tit for tat with the ripping of the clothes. Yeah. Right? So, right. Double Whoopee has some of it. So there's a lot of that in there. So I'm glad they had the smarts to cut it short.
No, I was going to just pull back on a little bit was just we talked very briefly just then about the use of sound and the use of dialogue. Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. I think in Perfect Day they do get that absolutely spot on use, that blend of dialogue and just pantomime. Yeah. And I think they're really starting to understand, and I think this is where Langdon is in the right place, because they're using sound only when they need to, or they're using dialogue only when they need to. So as you say, there is no big chunks of comic dialogue. They just speak when necessary. When there's a necessity to speak, they speak, and I think that works really well. And then they also, and I think from the start they were very good, very creative at using sound. So you had things like in Unaccustomed as We Are, you had the Kennedys whistling off camera, going, and all that kind of stuff, and also Stan falling down the stairs off camera, the bang bang bang. And then in Men of War, you've got the soda business, and that kind of use of sound is very, very good. And then just in Perfect Day, I mean, obviously one of the biggest things is the sound effect. I'll talk about that in a second, I think. But you've got like Grace Woods shouting goodbye with that high pitched, and that's just just really, you think you've kind of got used to the goodbyes. Yeah, okay, this is getting a little bit staid, and all of a sudden this goodbye comes in, and it's just ridiculous. But it's just it makes it so much
comedy,
better.
Right? Like it's just like you end on that beat, right? The topping the topper. So.
Absolutely, and it's just wonderful. But yeah, the use of sound is just very, very clever from the absolute word go. And they have that sound effect where Ollie hits Stan over the head with I think it's the clutch. Yeah. It looks like the clutch that he's ripped off. and you have this huge, big, hollow, clanging
Yeah.
sound, and that is just it's a wonderful cartoony kind of. I mean, we call it cartoony, but I think cartoons probably borrowed that off Laurel and Hardy, actually.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Richard Courier, I think it was Richard Courier, said that he came up with the idea of using sound effects that weren't actually the right sound effects, but made the point and made it funny.
Yeah.
Whether it was Courier or not, I don't know. Everybody in hindsight always always claims to be the one that invented something.
Well, it's funny because the reviews at the time, I think every review I've ever read of that film goes, this was a highlight. This use of sound brought the house down.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
And again, that gets back to how stodgy so many early talkies were. That just to have something unique like that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Harold Lloyd did a great thing in his first film, which my opinion of that one, but it's one of those things where there's a battle between him and some gangsters or whatever, and somebody turns out the lights, so all you hear are the voices, right? And it's just like, and the lights come back on. It's like, I found a set of stairs. Lights come on. He's on top of a ladder. Whoa! And then the lights go out, and you hear the crash. So that's some people thinking really good thoughts. I mean, the thing you were talking about with talking only when you needed to, that was Buster Keaton's thing. Buster Keaton said, so Buster Keaton's first talkie films are awful because it's very dialogue-y. There's this horrible scene in Free and Easy where he's an actor who's supposed to say, the queen has swooned. And he keeps saying, the queen has swooned. It's like, well, that's funny the first time, but not the 18th. It just kind of goes on and on. But Keaton always said, I'll talk. If I'm putting up a poster, I'm not talking to the next guy to me. I'm putting up a poster. If I need a hammer, I'll ask him for a hammer. Right? So that was the logic. Charlie Chase generally had like Thelma Todd's and a lot of stuff. So you'd have someone to play off all the time.
I think that's the point, isn't it? If you've got two, like Laurel and Hardy, you've got them. They would naturally talk to each other, whereas Keaton didn't need to talk to anybody, so he could have been silent. Do you think? Because I know Keaton spoke to was it Weingarten or something, his director at the time, or whoever it was, about exactly that. He wanted to just speak when it was required, rather than just speak for the sake of speaking.
Yeah.
And then they wouldn't have it. They just sort of pushed him through and said no. But do you think if Keaton had gone to Roach, do you think his career would have been different?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you think he would have? Do you think he would have done well at Roach?
Yeah, I think that because you can see Keaton almost doing well at Educational, right? Except he's a bit drunk, and a bit beaten down at that point. He looks
in real life.
Yeah. He's not playing a drunk character. He's drunk on the screen, but that's not the reason. But he'd been battered really hard. When you see him in his very last films, like What No Beer at MGM, that's a guy who's been beaten down. I think that Keaton was always about my team, right? And that was the first thing. At MGM, they took away my team after the first film, right? So I think he would have brought his team with him, probably. If he went, okay, for whatever reason, instead of Harry Langdon, Roach had signed Buster Keaton, I think you would have had some magnificent two-reelers from him. And I think that there would have been a potential, because Keaton was still a big draw at MGM, right until he was booted, right? Until they decided Jimmy Durante was the bigger name, that he would have gotten like Laurel and Hardy did, gotten back into features. I don't doubt that he would have done that Marie Dressler story that he wanted to do, where it was the Old West and they're on a stagecoach. He's like this Eastern innocent going into the West. And like, if I don't know who they would, maybe they would get Mae Wallace or something, like somebody at Roach that's hitting Marie Dressler's place. I don't know who, but I have no doubt that Keaton would have really flourished at, because he's one of the few, comedians who really owned their stuff. Who I think that with the right people, Lloyd Hamilton might have. Because he was really good. I think Roach was thinking of signing him at one point, but the story that I know of is, yeah, Lloyd Hamilton was that, oh, geez, between him and Charlie Chase, they've got too many drunks here already, right? Because Lloyd Hamilton was kind of known for enjoying his spirits, but I think he would have done well because he was a character comedian, right? Lloyd Hamilton. We were talking earlier, would Larry Seaman have done well? No, right? Because Roach wasn't good at that kind of stuff. Like they did the Taxi Boys, that was trying to do Max Senedy, Del Lord slapstick, and it didn't work well. But when you had real people, Thelma and Zazu Pitts or Patsy Kelly, Charlie Chase, that's the stuff that really worked well with Roach. Even the Boyfriends, when he resurrected the Our Gang kids as teenagers, they're likable, real people. So
that would have been so interesting to have seen Keaton in Roach shorts, wouldn't it? In interaction with Roach supporting characters on the back lot, and just it would have been such a great thing to see that, because obviously Keaton would have had all the freedom in the world to do his comedies the way he wanted to do. Yeah. Such a shame it didn't work out that way.
I mean, the thing would be, do you keep it in budget, like a two-reeler budget? What might have been Keaton's only issue, but Keaton was smart enough to know how to work small. Like all his TV stuff is he's working small. Right. Yeah. So, I think it's only because
I guess the only difference with that is like we mentioned with Langdon, Keaton is quite otherworldly in a way. The things that he does and things that he can do has no place in reality, really, which is what makes Roach comedies as they are. But they managed to tweak it for Langdon. So
yeah, well, I think Keaton's more accepting. I don't think they had to dumb him down at MGM the way he did. Right. They did. The Keaton structure, if you're talking about the features, is generally he's meek at the beginning and a whirlwind at the end, right? In Battling Butler or something like that. But he's realistic enough in the general that he's not otherworldly. Yeah. Things like College, it comes through at the end where he can suddenly pole vault and everything like that. But I think that would work in a Roach two-reeler done right, So yeah, I think if you look at some of those educational films and you go, if this had Roach production values and Roach performers in it and a little bit more time to think of the script, you would, you could see that there's a lot of possibility there. Yeah.
If only. Yeah. It's one of those if onlys, isn't it?
Anything else about Perfect Day?
I'm just checking my notes to see what we've got. I think I'm pretty much out of it. It's James Parrott's first talkie, and not the first film with Laurel and Hardy, of course, but James Parrott. Yeah, he took over from Foster, he'd been with the boys for the last 6 films, I think, and then he went to join the Langdon unit. So James Parrott was brought in. I think Parrott had been away on secondment. He'd been at Fox. He'd had a brief spell directing a handful of comedies for the Fox studio. That's right. So he came back to Fox, and they put him in the Laurel and Hardy unit. So, and he was a great director to put with the boys, because obviously he was friends with Stan anyway. He understood them, understood their comedy. He'd worked with them already before in the silent period, and he knew to sit back and let Stan run the show. Basically, there was going to be no friction there. So yeah, that great choice of director.
I wonder if that explains the jump in quality. Why
a jump up in quality.
Yeah, like from Men of War, which is pretty good, but has its challenges, to being a much more fluid, well-structured film with A Perfect Day, right?
That's an interesting
that actually
question.
builds and goes places.
Yeah, it's a bit of a, it's not a backhanded compliment. It's a bit of a slap in the face for Foster that you're giving.
No offense to Foster. But
no offense at all. No, but you've just, earlier on you slacked off the early Langdon shorts.
Exactly. Yeah, he went in and ruined Langdon. And then Warren Doan stepped in, and Langdon was suddenly vastly approved. But
you see, Warren Doan, general manager. I was going to say this at the time. He, I think back in 27, I want to say, he directed Chase, I think, for one or two pictures. And he went on record in the trade press saying that every executive at a studio should direct pictures because they should understand how it works, the pressures, the strains, the struggles that directors are under.
Okay.
Made perfect sense. So it was a great point. Whether that makes them a good director because they've done it or not, I don't know. So I don't know whether he should have actually.
I wonder what executive role Emmett Flynn played at Roach.
Oh, God. Yeah.
But what's interesting about the direction of Perfect Day is the hellos are punctuations, right? We finished this little gag sequence, right? And it's like,
you mean goodbye?
Yeah, goodbye. Sorry. So it's like, oh, I'm thinking of the other film. I'm thinking of the prequel.
Hello. Oh boy.
I'm thinking of Langdon's version. Hello, goodbye. Anyway, they'll do. Here's the thing with changing the tire. Now we're ready to go. Then it's like goodbye, and then something will happen. So it's a nice punctuation thing, and you go, where did that idea come from? Where did that rhythm come from? Because you never there's always the story of Stan was really the director. And I don't know about you, I've watched these films so many times and there's such a consistency to them that you kind of go, what difference does it make if James Horn is the director or James Parrott? I think I'd like to dive into that more and kind of look at it, what are the true differences between a James Parrott, Laurel and Hardy, and a James Horn? Because, or John Blystone or something like that. Because, well, we talk about it's Stan being the overall creative head of the thing, but being a collaborative person, was it just?
Well, I suppose you can look at Leo McCary's style when he directs the Marx Brothers.
Yes,
that is quite a different Marx Brothers film to the others. It's very, very good.
Oh yeah,
excellent, in fact. But it's not. It doesn't feel the same as a lot of the other Marx Brothers films. So it's a definite style that he's bringing to it. So yeah, I'm sure that there must be. I suppose it depends on how strong your director is, because obviously Stan wouldn't speak out against Leo McCary.
Yeah.
I understand. He would direct a lot of the directors, but he wouldn't say a word to Leo McCary in that respect. He totally respected his thoughts and his decisions. So, and of course McCary trained under Charlie Chase. So there's a lot of comedy coming through that guy.
Yeah. I think McCary is. You see him as a director in We Fall Down, that's got a whole different dimension to it. That is definitely McCary, and you can't really say with Liberty, because my understanding is that McCary shot all the opening stuff for Liberty while shooting We Fall Down, because it's going to be three reels. So there's that, but does McCary bring a special touch to High and Dizzy work? I can't really say so or not. Yeah. But I think McCary is the one where you go, that's a whole different animal.
But no, I think in terms of the general pool of directors, I think Stan had the absolute say, and that's why you say the consistency is there from film to film. But it's an interesting point, though, as you say, Perfect Day is kind of a step up. It feels a kind of a step up from Birthmarks and from Men of War. So yeah, it may well have been, because I mean, obviously James Parrott had an extensive background in comedy. He was his own star as Paul Parrott, wasn't he, in the one-reelers? Directed Charlie Chase for a number of years. So yeah, it could well be. He may well have brought more to the table than we actually not giving credit for. But
do you know off the top of your head if he directed They Go Boom? Because that's a major step down. That's like.
Although I know people that will argue with you on that one. But, yeah.
Well, they could. I'll argue with anyone. But I think it's got great stuff, but it's kind of like an extended, slowed down version of Angora Love without the goat. To me, Angora Love's a funny.
Randy always says that it's the way that it is because they're not spending any money, because they want to put a lot of money into the Husker, which is coming next.
Yeah, or the one.
So they want to go on location and do all of that kind of stuff. So they've got to get one out, which is just doesn't cost anything basically.
Yeah, well, yeah, it feels like a cheater that way a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But you put Stan and Babe in a room together for 20 minutes, and it's always going to be great. But in terms of just production, right? It does get interesting. Getting back to the music, right? If, let's say, Birthmarks was reissued with the 1937 music, would we like it better? Right? I know somebody online put some Bo Hunks music behind the upper berth scene in The Big Noise, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, that's cool. That's a nice experiment. That plays well. But the music makes so much of a difference. You can see, and I know that you're planning on talking about the music later on. When it becomes more appropriate, when it starts being introduced, the Shield stuff, and then Marvin Hatley. But what's interesting is these films always had music behind them when they were silent, right? And Stan knew the importance of music. So all of a sudden, you're watching talkies, and they're arid. It's like, where's that bounce and excitement of music? And so and I think it was really brilliant because I don't think anyone else was doing it, when Roach introduced these scores, these specific tracks. And some of the earlier ones, like I Love If I Mess, they're almost orchestrated. Like, they're so true. I think there's another, a Boyfriend short, I forget the name of it right now, where it's like that as well. It's like almost scored to the scene. But when you see some of the later Laurel and Hardy, like, let's say, Their First Mistake, does it, would it have been better with the music? Don't know, right? Like County Hospital, no one's ever seen that without the music. And so if you saw that stuff with the rear projection and no music, because it's the music that makes it exciting, right? I don't know. The music plays such a strong role in the Laurel and Hardy films. I think that, I may be wrong, but I think that the Laurel and Hardy features were the only, let's say, because of MGM, major studio features that had end-to-end music. Like, I can't think of any other film from the day where just the music is nonstop, right? Yeah, I could be wrong, and that's what elevates the film. Since Stan knew that, right? Like, Stan, from his music hall training, knew the importance of music. So
yeah, but it just gives the films that trademark feel, doesn't it? As well, you listen to, you can shut your eyes and listen to any Roach short that's got music behind it, and it's a Roach short, because it's just it's almost like an extra character in the film, isn't it?
Yeah, it seriously is. And it unites them all, That's why Kennedy the Cop can be in Laurel and Hardy and in Our Gang shorts, right? It's the same guy,
Yeah. And you look at the music box that didn't have any music in it, intentionally, because Stan wanted to hear the keys and the bangs and which is, again, a great use of sound and understanding of sound. Yeah, fantastic. I think we've pretty much we've run it dry. I think, Chris. I think my notes are out. I don't know if you've got anything else you wanted to bring up.
I don't know if there's going to. I mean, I think at a certain point we have to talk about Langdon some more, just in terms of his return to Roach later on. So
of course,
when we get to
that's a bit down the road.
Zenobia in the year 2037, call me up. And
it won't be that soon. The way I'm going.
The way you're going, yeah. But
I'll still be writing the Silence book in that year.
But because that's of course another really interesting story as well about Langdon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just to cap it off, I think Perfect Day is one of those top favorites of mine.
That's great.
Not number one. I don't like to do top 10 lists, but boy, it has to be in my top 10 list somewhere, and probably pretty high up.
Interesting.
Because it's just a fun film to watch, because it's the naturalism. I know you said some stuff looks choreographed. Like, I love the scene with Kennedy and changing the tire, where they slam the door on his foot and then the dog bites it, and the whole wheel falls, the rim falls onto Kennedy's foot, and it's just that's all in one shot. It's funny in McCabe's book, Mr. Laurel, Mr. Hardy, he talks about it being edited. Like it all comes to it was not edited. It's just like done.
No.
And unlike the one you're talking about at the beginning with the sandwiches, you have to look really hard and have watched it 30 times like I have to go, okay, I see the choreography here. And again, if it had gone, cranked at 22 seconds instead of 24, it might have been a little bit clearer. Ben Modell's done those really interesting studies on undercranking and how, like Buster Keaton could do a thing, and when you watch it in real time, you can absolutely see the choreography of it, right?
Oh, wow.
But you bump it to 20 frames a second, and it's like it's so smooth and wonderful. So, and that's something Laurel and Hardy didn't do a lot of because they were very natural comedians. Like they were born for 24 frames a second, but sometimes that little kiss helps a comedian. That little bump. And I think they would have understood that. So, but yeah, Perfect Day is a delightful film for me. It's a go-to, when you go, I just feel like watching something. It would be that one. Boy, I'd put it in my top 5, I think.
Top 5? It's getting higher.
Well,
if we hang on, we're going to be number 1.
Oh, geez, because there's always Blotto, and County Hospital's pretty good, and I can go on forever, right?
But it's great that I had no idea that you rated it that highly. I mean, Perfect Day, I think it's a great film. It's not one that I return to that often. I don't know. I always enjoy it when I see it, but I don't know. It's not one that I would put in my top 10. I don't think.
I'd put it in front of a lot. I'd put it in front of Oliver the Eighth, or Thicker Than Water, like a lot of those.
Yeah.
It's a good upper percentile. Like it's definitely in the top 40% for me, of the films, I'd have to say. Yeah. Don't make me do math. I'm going to come back with my list next time. It's like, let's do a countdown of Chris's favorite Laurel and Hardy films one by one and why they're at that number.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. Well, that's great. Thanks ever so much for joining me again, Chris, and hopefully it won't be too long before we get you back on again.
Thank you.
Until next time, I've just got to say one word.
Goodbye. Goodbye. We have to. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Thanks, Chris. We'll see you again soon.
Goodbye, and this time I mean it.
And as our Model T sinks slowly into the deepest water-filled pothole imaginable, our episode also reaches its end. I hope you enjoyed our look at Perfect Day and everything else besides. And if you find enjoyment and value in these podcasts, then please consider showing your support and becoming a patron on patreon.com. That's patreon.com. Incidentally, I'll be posting some deleted segments from this episode on Patreon shortly, so do look out for those. You can find and follow me on the Laurel and Hardy Podcast's Facebook page, and also you could join our podcast community in our newly titled Facebook group, Fraternally Yours. Links to all that are, as usual, in the podcast show notes. So all that remains is to thank today's guest, the marvellous Chris Seguin. Thanks to the Bohunks Orchestra and Basta Music for the wonderful music. And last but never least, thank you to you for choosing to spend this time with me again. And until next time, it's goodbye from me and a very goodbye from them.
Goodbye! 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 Enjoy yourself! Bye! Goodbye! 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 Bye! Well, goodbye! 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 Goodbye!
Bye.